Hey folks, hope you guys are having a fantastic Wednesday. Welcome to the Newpub Talk show. I don't know what I'm going to talk about today. There's lots of things to talk about, right? Big one is Concord, right? The game everyone was looking forward to, launched, and apparently they can't get 1,000 players on a $200 million game at launch to play the game. That's Concord. Truth be told, I barely paid attention to Concord. I only knew it was a game because they released a special edition controller for it. And the controller looked cool. And I looked at the controller and I was like, oh, I wonder if it's like a space adventure game, like Starfield or something like that, you know? Kind of reminded me of this kind of pseudo, kind of retro-futurism designs. Like, this has been a thing that's been coming back around for a while. It's like, okay, a design from the 1980s or the 1970s that just kind of harkens to that design language from the early 80s or the late 70s with the lines and things like that. So, in fact, let me look it up. We'll just look at some stuff. That'll be fun. Concord. But what I remember, the only reason I knew it existed was because of this controller. Then I looked at the game and I thought it was a really boring idea. Here's the controller. Here's what the controller looks like right here. So this is a cool looking controller, I don't know what had a worse launch, Concord or Dustborn. I don't even know what Dustborn is. So probably Dustborn. Because that one is so far off my radar, I don't even know what to say about it. So I look at this controller and I'm like, this is a really cool design. This looks like something from 1983 in a good way. 1983 was a great year. It's the year I was born. Stuff coming out of the early 80s had a design language that it really appeals to me. I think I talked about this with the Tron video. It's like there was so much that came out of that was high quality, and by the time 1990s rolled around, the design language had shifted more to what we think of as the 80s. This is a weird thing. Like, we kind of make what the 80s really look like 1992. But the design language in 1983 was more like this, and a lot of people associate it with Star Wars, and that's appropriate. Star Wars was a phenom between 77 and 83, so this kind of fits in that design language. But I thought it was really cool looking. I almost got it just because I thought it looked really cool, and I thought it would be a cool one. But I was like, what is Concord? I thought Concord was like a brand I didn't know about, I was like, oh, I thought it was maybe like Gucci, right? It kind of looks like, oh, maybe it's a brand. And it's like, no, there's a game. There's a game called Concord that this goes with. And I'm like, oh, it's like a sci-fi game, right? And I look it up, and it's Overwatch, right? It's Overwatch. The game is Overwatch. So it had like 30 players at launch. It was a government-funded DEI game. Dustborn had 30 players at launch. Holy crap. European government, to be exact. Yeah. So I looked at it, and if I just let's look at some of the graphics for Concord. I was like, this is not appealing to me. Like, at all. When I look at this, I'm like, this doesn't really look very interesting. It looks like a bargain bin Guardians of the Galaxy or something. Like, it looks like it's playing it, and then we have these characters like this. Like, what are they thinking? Like, what were they thinking with some of this? I don't know. They were probably thinking like, we have to have a diverse ensemble cast. Of these designs are terrible. It's what it is like there's certain designs that work when you're making a comic, and then they've had trouble with this, tried to adapt Marvel movies for decades, right? Spider-Man's costume really only looks good on a comic book page. As soon as we put like spandex or latex or something on a person, it starts to look really goofy. And that's not to say that Spider-Man movies are bad or anything, or the costume looks horrible. Like, the adjustments that they made to make it look correct on a real person have been pretty good. But like, you can look at early Spider-Man stuff where it's like a spandex costume, it just looks awful, right? Wolverine, like, we finally got Wolverine in his costume, and they still had to make a lot of adjustments because certain things, like with these weird shoulders and stuff, they look good when you draw them as a comic book character. Like if you were to abstract this and draw it as a comic character, like if I were to just illustrate this, it would look cool. And people would be like, that's a cool design. But when you render it in this photorealistic style, everything looks really stupid. It looks really goofy. Like this guy looks really goofy. This looks like somebody, yeah, again, like 80s, what we think of as like 80s design language. None of these lines flow once you put them on a three-dimensional body. You know, this pointed stuff, it just doesn't flow right. And like this weird aqua poncho and the fedora, like, just really weird designs, right? I don't look at this and I also don't like, I don't feel like any of this goes together. Am I wrong? You know, when you look at something like Destiny, it feels like everything sticks together. It's all part of a unified design language. But this just feels like hit the randomizer button on your character. You know? Or something designed by like a comic artist that a 3D artist had to kind of render, and it just doesn't work. So I looked at it and I thought it was silly. Then I looked at the gameplay. I'm like, I have no desire to play this game. If you're into Overwatch, maybe this would be a game for you. But therein lies the problem that I see with a game like Concord. Concord is trying to be, as near as I can tell, it's not a game I'm interested in playing. So feel free to correct me and tell me what's super special about Concord. But as a person who doesn't play these kinds of games, it is just Overwatch, which itself was just Team Fortress 2 with like trying to impose story and things upon it, right? With more things added. So it's Overwatch. If you already play Overwatch, why do you want to play Concord? This is the problem that I've seen a couple of live service games fall into. The most notable is going to be any MMO from around 2010, like a couple years before, a couple years after. After World of Warcraft hit 10 million subs, everyone was like, we got to develop MMORPGs. That's where the money is. And it's really easy to maybe sell the idea of an MMO to like investors or to executives, because you say, okay, here's the revenue Blizzard is generating with World of Warcraft. There's 10 million subscribers times $15 a month, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, this is the revenue we'd be making. That's the revenue you'd be making if you had World of Warcraft. For you to make that same revenue, you'd either have to find 10 million new people to play that style of game, or you'd have to take all of the World of Warcraft players away from World of Warcraft. That's not realistic, right? So when you are going into a live service genre, let's say, like hero shooter, which I guess is a genre now, you are going to be taking a slice of a pie that is kind of fixed. It's really doubtful you're going to generate a lot of new customers who are interested in hero shooters that didn't play Overwatch or don't play Team Fortress 2. So this game's doing really bad, but I think the entire concept of the game could have been thought of like in the inception stage as far as budget goes, is like, okay, we're going to be trying to steal Overwatch players, right? Right, okay. How many do we think we can steal? Well, I think we could steal 500,000 players. Okay, that's our goal. All right, what's our budget? Our budget is $10 million, right? Versus 200 million or whatever they spent on this game. You can't, this is the problem, and I've talked about it, and I'll talk about it again. Line does not always go up. Sometimes line goes down, okay? But the game industry for years now, and people say Sony is stupid, and this is an example of maybe Sony being stupid. I don't think they're as stupid as people think, but this game was developed for 8 years. You can't just not release it. I mean, you probably could and then like write it down as a loss. Maybe that would have been wiser. But are you just going to not release it? Okay, you'd been developing it under the assumption that everything will grow. You're going to see infinite, wait, there it is on your screen. You're going to see infinite growth. Is that realistic? is it realistic for you to see infinite growth? No, it's not. And when you look at something like, we can go backwards to 2010 and look at World of Warcraft. It had 10 million subscribers. And look at it at that time, because that was its peak. For you to put out an MMO with maybe even bigger budget, that growth would have to continue for like an extra 10 years, and all of that new growth would have to go to you. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you had spent your money on a single player game, single player games are not the same as live service games. When someone is playing a live service game, they don't play other games, especially in that genre. So somebody who's I don't know anyone who subscribes to World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy 14. It's one or the other. Right now I'm playing Final Fantasy 14. I know WoW is, I think, coming out with another expansion, or maybe it's already out. I just really haven't paid attention to it because, like, none of my friends are playing, so what's the point, right, at that point? That's the only reason that I really would want to play World of Warcraft, is to have other people to play with. The story is not interesting. The meta of the world is not interesting enough for me to play long term. Like the way that raids are set up with 4 different difficulty levels, having to do the same thing for 6 months until they release another raid, then doing that for another 6 to 12 months or whatever. Anyway, I don't know anyone who does more than one. You know, someone might play Overwatch, like especially free-to-play. If you have a free-to-play live service game, people will maybe play that on the side. They're not going to play Team Fortress 2 and Overwatch and Concord. They're just not going to do it. They're going to pick one to maximize and to like be their game. And that's the game they're going to play. And so is it realistic for you to think everyone's going to quit Overwatch and play Concord? That's what you'd have to do for that game to be successful. That doesn't seem like a very wise thought. But if you'd made a single player game, single player games aren't like that. People will drop the single player game they're playing to play a new single player game and come back to the old one. They'll buy multiple single player games every year. They'll buy games and not even play them, right? So if you're looking at making a game, you probably want to go for that pie that doesn't get divided, that's not fixed. And that's going to be single player games. So single player games over the long term are going to be a better way to make your money back overall, even though the potential gain of a live service game is higher. You have to be the number one. It's a winner take all. Or maybe winner take all, and maybe some other people can make money too. Like NCSoft has found ways to make money with their MMOs. You know, Final Fantasy 14 makes a lot of money. It prints money. World of Warcraft makes a lot of money. But there's not, like, if you come out, no one plays like Rift. No one played Warhammer Online, which was a really good game overall. But was it better than WoW? No. Were people going to quit WoW to play it? No. WoW was not in a state where it was really bad, and people were willing to just jump off of it. And Final Fantasy 14 was really only successful once WoW started getting bad. I asked this question on Twitter: when did WoW get bad? And the usual answer is somewhere around Cataclysm. So that'd be like 2012, I think. And that's about the time Final Fantasy 14 2.0, the Realm Reborn, came out. Somewhere around there, 2013, 2014. I have to look up the dates. But they came out with it. It came out at a time where people were willing to play a game that wasn't World of Warcraft, that were already in the MMO genre, and you had Final Fantasy fans that would be willing to play another MMO that didn't play Final Fantasy 11 maybe, or were looking to get out of Final Fantasy 11. So you could cannibalize your previous MMO, and you could actually grow the pie a little bit, and you were coming out at a time where people were looking to get off of the World of Warcraft train. So you had an opportunity to gain some customers and have some success in that realm. It didn't exist in 2010. You weren't going to get people from World of Warcraft to jump over. So anyway, let's take a look at the chat real quick and see what's up. What's up? What's up, Adrian? Hope you're having a great Wednesday. I don't know which had a worse launch, Concord or Dustborn. Yeah. Concord definitely cost more to make, but Dustborn was paid by the EU. Well, the governments can write down the loss. Dustborn is the new Warriors reboot of video games. Your character skills are trigger, cancel, and normalize, and everybody's non-binary with a skin disease. The target audience is obese purple hairs, aka people who don't play video games. It'll be gone in a few months. Yeah, that's the other thing. This is it's the My Little Buddy and G.I. Joe philosophy, which is like, can we sell things to people who don't normally buy this product? The answer is sometimes yes, right? If we're going to market this to blue hairs, that means we're going to grow the pie to blue hairs. But that doesn't always work. You can't always sell the My Buddy doll. A lot of anime manga designs look cool until you bring them into real life. Yes, things in a two-dimensional fantasy space where we're getting a gesture towards something, like with comics, that makes a lot more sense than when we start to put them in 3D space. Looks like a Fortnite squad. Yeah, there you go. One of the reasons Overwatch worked is Blizzard polish and lack of Valve caring about Team Fortress 2. But the better hero clone of Overwatch is a literal game with Marvel heroes called Marvel Rivals. Big brain move. Yeah. And then you can get some Marvel fans. So if you can get an established IP, like if instead of having this, it was like Final Fantasy Heroes or something, I don't know, some other established IP, you might be able to grow the pie because you get some customers who aren't in that genre to maybe buy in a little bit. But ultimately, you're going to be trying to steal customers from a competitor rather than merely grow the pie. Most people with single player games aren't deciding like, oh, am I going to play Final Fantasy 16 or am I going to play Cyberpunk? They play both. They'll play one then the other. They'll play them both at some point, right? So it's not an either or. Whereas with a live service, it is. Like, you're trying to climb ladders if you want to play competitively. You're not playing more than one game unless you're somebody who just doesn't have to work or have anything else going on in your life. Which there's those people out there, and they exist, but that's not most people. Val says he's subbed to both. We'll probably unsub from WoW in a month, though. So what I usually do with WoW is, like, when an expansion comes out, I will play through the content of that expansion and then quit. That's my usual thing that I do. Why do I do that? Well, it's because WoW has never fixed their treadmill and they're never going to. So there's really no reason for me as a busy person who likes to do things like publish books to subscribe past the first raid, is certainly, and subscribe past the point where I'm finishing the first raid on like normal mode. So my usual goal is to play and do the first normal mode raid and then quit. And I know people that they resub 2 or 3 times during an expansion cycle. They resub when the second raid comes out and they resub when the third raid comes out, because there's usually 3 raids, right? So then they'll do Raid Finder. They're okay. I sub up. I get the badges or the whatever points they have for catch-up mechanic. Get enough gear to do Raid Finder, and then I just do Raid Finder, and then I quit again. So I saw the content. You saw the content. I'm just like, I can just watch the raid on World of Warcraft or on YouTube. I mean, and it's not that big a deal to me, right? To me, it's like I want to see it sight unseen, but nobody plays that way. You can't even get into a raid. It's like, did you go watch the YouTube videos on how to do this from some guild that did it when it was in the PTR? No, then you're out of the raid. Okay, do you have all these 25 mods installed so that you can click the cubes when the mod yells at you to click on the thing and to jump out of the fire and to heal the person? It's like, I don't have those mods. Then you're out of the raid. If you don't have deadly boss mods or whatever the current one is, then you can't raid. You have to have a bunch of mods to help you play the game that autoplay the game for you. It's really stupid. I really don't like modern WoW raiding for that reason. I think, looking back, I will say that highest among design decisions that WoW made that turned out to be a mistake, mods was one of them. And Final Fantasy XIV is absolutely correct to not allow you to run mods. Because you're always going to end up having to design things with whatever mods people are using in mind. The entire culture of World of Warcraft revolves around certain numbers, like DPS. So if you're not running a DPS meter, everyone's running a DPS meter and judging you on the DPS meter. And I don't necessarily think that's evil, right? They want to, you want to have your raid be performing well. But because people are so clued into optimizing everything they do, you have to make the raids kind of fit that. Same thing with like, mouse over macros. Like, you got to mouse over and press the button. And so, like there's lots of weird little things that get added into the interface over time because people were using mods for them. Eventually, Quest Helper became just integrated into the interface because everybody used it. So are you going to read the quest text and level slower than other people? No, you're going to use the Quest Helper. You can't come to the raid. Your gear score is this. What's gear score? Oh, it's a mod. You have to install this mod and see what your gear score is. And if your gear score is not high enough, you never get into the raid. It's like, but I already cleared this raid. It's like, don't care. Your gear score is too low to come to the raid. And I remember at a certain point, they were inviting people with gear scores to raids who the gear score was high enough that they didn't need anything from the raid. So the only way you could get into the raid is if you didn't need gear from that raid. We used to do in vanilla, link your best 3 epics. Link your best 3. Show me that you've done some content. I'll tell you how to do the fights. I was happy to tell people how to do fights and raids. It's fine. Nick Tech has a quick 3-minute video about Dustborn called "This is a 2024 game. You should take a quick look to see how hilarious and bad this game is." Let's take a look at it. Is this it? Yes. All right. Let me pause the music here. If you want to listen to my last album for free, by the way, you can. It's right here. We'll check out the Nick Tech video in just a second. Let me get everything in the chat. I like to pay attention to people. So I'm going to check that out. Currently playing The War Within. I like the high fantasy environments. The side quests are more entertaining than usual. Music is fine. Shame about the main story, though. Has the usual putting down of strong men in favor of girl bosses and trouser characters and the more relativist message of find your truth. You have to have find your truth because you can't say that the Horde are bad. The Horde can't be the bad guys. You know what I mean? So it's inevitable because everybody can be the good guys in Final Fantasy XIV because there's no factions. But as soon as you have factions, it's like, oh, I think the Horde is good. I don't like that you make us monsters who want to eat people. Like, if you play vanilla, the Horde is evil, pretty much, right? Like, you do quests that involve, like, poisoning people's dogs. Right? When you're Horde. And that's cool. We thought it was cool. We didn't go, oh, man, I don't want to poison it. I'm an evil undead zombie. Dude, of course I'm gonna eat dogs, whatever. And then like the undead you could eat someone's corpse as an undead. I don't know if you could still do that or they took that out of the game. Like, it's evil stuff. It's evil. That's the whole point. I really miss those 360 era 15 to 25 hour action games. Absolutely. They're still around. They're like the Spider-Man games are that. Totally. I thought I wanted those endless open world games, but I really want multiple different adventures that take 15 to 25 hours. I am with you there, Spaceman. Sony still has a lot of them, but some of them they try to make so cinematic that it's like I'm just bored by this. I want God of War, not God of walking around watching, not a God of cutscenes. All right, let's take a look at this. I'll turn up the volume a little bit. We'll watch this awful ad. Here we go. Advertisement. Have you considered playing this awful game?
Yo, leave my friends alone. You're just in time. Let's show these guys what we can do. We've been in some scraps, sign me. We've learned to combine our talents.
Wow, that vocal delivery.
Shout at these folks to block them. You know what? It's easier to explain if we just do it.
Okay.
Stand down.
You stand down.
No one needs to get hurt.
You're right. So stand still.
Wow, the vocal acting is so bad. The voice acting.
It's my time.
It's
Afternoon, boys. You ready for this?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, we're not boys.
That's the voice acting.
Words from a small boy.
What are we watching? Playing synth drumatar there. Yeah.
Sai, what? Hold the bus up. But, Sai, I need you to do this for me. Okay?
This weird cell shading style from like PlayStation 2.
I'll do it. Shit, that's heavy.
Careful.
Uh-oh, cuss word.
That's explains why the jack's not working.
Luna, where's the wireless router?
Finally a modern game for the mythical modern audience.
I know what a router
I saw Megadeth for the first time last Friday, and they were still incredible. Yeah. You got Timu. Timu's in the band. Timu Mantisari from Winter Sun.
break the antenna. No wonder.
He's a fantastic player.
I think we need to adjust this to get us.
James Laminzo from White Lion.
I'd like to come out now, please.
I've always been pleased when seeing Megadeth live. I'm guessing there's just like no commentary on this. This is just showing what the game is. It's just pretty funny. There's a bad rhythm game inside this game. What is the S button? Oh, these are keyboard things. AWS. I'm thinking of a controller. Pick up bat. A.
That's amazing. How?
Electromagnetic fields. With that glove on, you can control the bat. Throw it, and it comes back.
Sis, you're a genius. And I know just how to take this for a spin.
An attorney may be assigned to you by justice.
Meet
during
Pete.
the trial. Your sentence
Throw bat. Throw it.
is guilty now.
Come on, throw it. Okay.
I'm in
Why don't you use a gun?
I'm warning you guys.
Yeah.
Stay the hell away from me.
Because a gun's not as fun as throwing a bat,
Hey,
apparently.
robots. Do you understand what I'm saying? You have a vocal interface?
Yes.
Do you have a vocal interface?
Didn't ask a question.
The voice actors got paid minimum wage for this game. Hold on. So that was like what they had at the end there was like the voice actors got paid minimum wage for the game. It sounds like it, right? Like this, it sounds like they were like just completely. Maybe you guys can't see it. Can you see it? The voice actors got paid minimum wage for this game. Can you talk about something other than cringe? Yeah, people compared the art style to old Telltale games. Now, I'll tell you what it reminds me of is the newer King's Quest game. So if you look up King's Quest, it's this art style. It's it's made to run on a potato, right? That's kind of what's going on there. So that's what that's about. So if you look up King's Quest, the newer King's Quest, that's the art style they went with. Why did they do this art style? That's a good question, right? Is it misguided? I don't know. Is it that they can't? I think if you can, maybe it's to avoid having to optimize, because if you made something that had really high graphical fidelity, it's hard to optimize that for hardware, even if you're like going with really good hardware. This has been an issue I think I've seen with a couple of games, but if you keep the graphics low, then you can run it on a lot of different systems. So, then you have games like Genshin Impact that have a more stylized view, more stylized art, but the game looks really good and runs really well too. Everyone just wants to play as Monkey. What's that? That's the Journey to they made a Journey to the West game, right? Time to Adventure is a privileged kid from a liberal arts college. Anger's Secret Garden is so surreal to think about since it has both a Rhapsody and Megadeth member. Two of my favorite metal bands in completely different styles. Yeah, Angra is a really good band. I like them a lot. There's a new Winter Sun album coming out this week too. Time 2 is finally coming out, which is cool. Black Myth Wukong, that's it. Yeah. So I think Black Myth Wukong is selling like gangbusters. But from what I've seen of it, it doesn't look like a super like special game, you know. It looks like kind of a standard action game, but I think that's what people wanted. Is like, we just want to play a game where we fight monsters and stuff. You know, can I smash some bad guys? Can I smash a bear? Can I kill this bear here? That's what I want to do in the game. Is there a chance I'll die while playing? Oh, cool. Then that might be fun, right? Sold like 10 million in 3 days, right? Yeah. So why did it do so well and the other games fail? Because it's a game. As far as what I've seen, I haven't bought it yet. Maybe I should buy it and play it, right? From what I've seen of it, it's like, oh, this is a game. This looks like a standard action game. People are like, oh, well, you know, it's just a standard action game. Well, who else is doing standard action games? No one's doing them. So, of course, people want to play them. You know, if you're making them play woke, throw my magnetic bat garbage with terrible voice acting, they'll take anything. And they'll read the subtitles even if the game is in Chinese. Look at this guy. This guy's funny looking. Elder Jinchi. Jinchi. He's got spikes all over his face. What is he doing? Yeah. Monkey dude. Cool looking armor. Lots of cool details, right? Doesn't look like something somebody designed as a comic book character. It looks like something that they intentionally designed to be highly Baroque on a three-dimensional object. If you like Souls-like, you'll like Wukong. Plays a lot like Neo. Sweet. Those are cool games too. So, and that's an interesting thing to think about too, is that we've had this kind of evolution of this idea of Souls-like games, and a lot of them are really more like God of War, but because the newest God of Wars don't play like God of War, we don't make the connection. We just kind of connect to the closest thing, which is Dark Souls. But if you go back and you play God of War 1, 2, 3, they play a lot more like, we used to call them spectacle fighters, right? Or they play a lot more like these modern action games. Playing, what was it, Stranger of Paradise? That one, people were like, oh, it's like Dark Souls. I'm like, yeah, I could see the connection. I absolutely can see the connection. And really that it's an action game where you are fighting a thing and it's hard. So it's so, it's Souls-like. But there's hard parts in God of War, Castlevania Lord of Shadows, right? There's this whole genre, I think people have forgotten the games from more than 10 years ago because Dark Souls has made such a big impact on people's like perception of what action games are supposed to be, that I think people have just kind of forgotten about some of those older ones. They're really worth going back and playing. Castlevania Lord of Shadows is a great game, aesthetically awesome still, even though it's outdated graphics, like the textures are not as sharp, but it's got really great, beautiful environments, really cool combat, can be very challenging at times, and really they don't give you a whole lot of chances to redo stuff, right? If you fail, you can go back, but you're going to be missing a lot of health, for example. So there's definitely some good challenges in that game. I like that game a lot. The Demon Souls remake is pretty good too, So, but anyway, people, whenever I see a comparison to Dark Souls, I'm like, can we compare a different game? It's like, this is the Dark Souls of Zelda. I'm like, Dark Souls of Zelda was Zelda 2. And that it actually is, to me, very similar to Dark Souls. Like a series of challenging enemies you have to do a pretty precise button combination to get through. Not in that it's 3D, right? Because that didn't exist back then. Stranger of Paradise was closer to Neo than Dark Souls. That's probably a good way of putting it, right? But even then, Neo gets compared to Dark Souls. It was probably the same company, I think, that did Neo. I could be wrong, though. Hack and slash character action games. Yeah, absolutely. Hack and slash. Well, we used to just call them... well, yeah, I mean, there's different versions of it. Hack and slash, yeah, I remember that. Now that I'm thinking about it. I'd kill for standard in gaming. Yeah. I think Souls-like meant to mean a methodical hack and slash. Yeah. But people just kind of abstract it to mean like a challenging... A game which challenges your dexterity is a Souls-like game now. It's too broad. It's a little too broad. Sony is embarrassed by all the games that came out before The Last of Us. Looking back, the early 2010s were full of... There's sort of aspirational ethoses that encapsulate certain times and certain cultures in certain places. So the aspirational ethos of heavy metal circa 1990 was to be as extreme as possible. Right? This is why people will say this sounds like it's from the 80s, even though nothing from the 80s sounded like that. Because the ethos from like 1988 was there. And you can hear it in a lot of records, even though you listen to them and you're like, well, that's not as extreme as I thought. Even listening to Altars of Madness, you're like, well, this isn't like as crazy as I thought it would be. And it's like, yeah, but it was really, you know, there was something that they were trying to achieve, and they didn't achieve it till a lot later. For video games in the early 2010s, it was this serious experience. That's what people aspired to. That's what the whole culture talking about video games aspired to, was some sort of serious experience. You hear it now, like they use words like cinematic to describe that, like it's a cinematic experience. I think what they wanted is they wanted games to be serious. They wanted them to be people to take them seriously and for them to be serious experiences. So there's lots of games that were in that aspirational direction, particularly in what we call now the AAA industry, which is really something I think that starts in about 2007. Gaming Ground Zero. And Gaming Ground Zero had some games that certainly finally had the visuals of this looks serious. Modern Warfare, Gears of War. Even though Gears of War is very like stylized, it had a this looks serious graphics. Even Doom 3, if we go a little bit earlier, this looks serious. So they needed games to not just look serious, they needed them to be serious. And Last of Us encapsulates that ethos quite well. And you had games that followed up out of that a lot of people forgot about. There was one called like The Order for PS4 that was this almost like a graphical demo that looked really good, but it was a short game and nobody really bought it or played it. It might be worth going back and playing it now. And now it's like, it's only a 12-hour game. Back then, like if a game only lasted 12 hours, that was not serious. A real game's gotta take as long to watch as Game of Thrones, you know? Longer. It's gotta take longer to watch than Game of Thrones. If you can watch the entire series of Game of Thrones in less time than it takes to play your game is not serious. And that's the way people thought in 2010. It's like Red Dead Redemption 2. I've never gotten through the tutorial. I think I have it. Who did I play? I played it on someone else's system, and I was like, this is boring. It's probably a good game, but it's trying to be too serious. And Souls-like is a bit of a spectrum. You're right, absolutely. The Order 1886. That was a interesting game that people were like, it's serious, but no one played it because it's short. So that was The Last of Us. It was the swan song for PS3, and it's very good that it bookends the entire experience of the PS3. The PS3 launched with God of War 2. God of War 2 was the last PS2 game, and people bought it and played it on their PS3. It launched with games like that and Heavenly Sword, like games that are really the pinnacle of the ethos that came before in the early 2000s, which is like games are fun and crazy, and we have crazy ideas. And it ended with kind of AAA slop. And PS4 and PS5 has tended to be defined by mud genre, following Skyrim's success, right? Skyrim being kind of the pinnacle of that generation. Although I prefer Oblivion for a lot of reasons. Like, Skyrim looked a certain way, it looked real enough, it made people feel these things, and then everybody else is just trying to copy the features from it without thinking about why that game was fun. So you end up with the mud genre. Roger Ebert killed gaming, saying that they'll never be art, right? People are like, well, I'll prove to you that it can be art by making a game that's not fun. There was also one like Spec Ops The Line was very much in this aspirational direction. It's still a really fun game, and it has really, really good aesthetics. It's visually awesomely designed. It even has like that full screen glow effect, which is I just love. But it was very serious. It was Heart of Darkness. It's a serious game, very serious. And I think it's a good game, but it's obvious that it's trying to be very serious. This is a game for people who are serious. Generations simply need to move for games to be taken earnestly. Not much else will do it. How long did it take for films to be taken seriously? Yeah, it maybe took a couple generations. And then the other thing you have to think about with comparing films to games is that a game is not a 2-hour experience most of the time. It's about gameplay. And so it takes longer to master and explore complex gameplay than it does to simply passively watch a movie. It's not just about the story, it's about moving through set pieces and playing a game. So it's a very different experience from playing movies. And I think we didn't really get games as a fully mature technology until the 2000s. Since then, we've been improving graphics a little bit, but we haven't really been improving gameplay very much. We haven't been improving the experience of the game as a game that much since about 2007, I would say. Yeah, Spec Ops The Line had good combat and mechanics. What Spaceman Smith says on Twitter, on X. People forget that the reason you played the game was because it was good. It was engaging. It was fun. It was challenging. It had good gameplay. Make a manga, Dave. I think you could make a great shonen manga. Probably not. So people ask me why I haven't made a comic or a manga or something like that. There's a lot of reasons. The main one is that, like, why haven't you made a graphic novel? I intensely dislike the culture of comics in the English language, I'm going to say. Specifically American culture, right? So it's like, what about these European comics and what about manga? Well, I don't really have the inroads to sell comics to Europeans in their language, in their native tongue, or to sell manga in Japan. So because I can't reach those audiences very easily, and for me to reach an audience that would buy manga, it would just be a very long and difficult journey for me to try to reach them, to sell them the book. So that just means that comics are off the table because the culture of American comics is so small and so inbred and so toxic. I just don't even want to touch it, right? Whether it is the comic pros or it is the indie outsiders, it's just not worth the effort. It's not worth the effort. And it's really hard to make money on an expensive product like a comic. It's multiple, you're talking, it's an order of magnitude more expensive to make a graphic novel than to just write a book. Because the only person I have to pay when I write a book is me. Whereas if I'm making a graphic novel, I need to pay an artist, and I have to pay him well enough, and it has to be a good enough artist to do it. And it takes a long time for him to do his work, and therefore I have to pay him a lot of money for it. Then I can sell it maybe for a little bit higher price, but I have to move a lot of volume in order to make up the difference so that we can both get paid and both be paid decently for our contributions for our work. So in terms of business, it's really hard, but especially in terms of culture. It's a scene, it's a subculture that I just don't want to deal with. And so I'm never going to do it. I'm never going to deal with them. Is where it is, unless like they all die off somehow or something changes radically. But I don't see it changing. American comics is a dead medium as far as I'm concerned. It's going nowhere. and it's continuing to shrink year after year. The only audience for it is aging nerds, which is not a terrible audience because they will buy a lot of product, but it's not something that has a lot of growth, a lot of inroads for an outsider to work in. Like I would work for Marvel or something, right? But they would never hire me because of who I am. So that's not going to happen. And then for me to do it independently, it's just, I would have to interact with too many people that I intensely dislike to try to sell it. So it's not going to happen. That's just how it is. I'd love to, but it's probably off the list. I'd probably make a visual novel first because it would be easier to sell that to English audiences and foreign audiences versus trying to make a European style comic and figure out how to sell that to Europeans. It's kind of sad how the overwhelming majority of indie games are made by people who look like they have never played a game in their life. I don't know about that. I think the majority are made by legit programmers, but you get a lot of promotion of ridiculous indie games, right? Just because of how that works. It's visible, and like there's Ed McMullen still makes good games, but he does look weird, right? So I'll judge the games. The games are cool, and they kind of fit with his weirdness, his weird look, but it's cool. The games are good. Comics are complex, lots of moving parts. I agree. A lot of people to pay, and if you're going to do it in the Marvel style, and a lot of people do this, they pay a letterer, and they pay an inker, and they pay a colorist. They pay like 4 or 5 people to get this book out. It's a lot of stuff. Red Dead 2 killed its immersion with me when I staged a train heist in the mountains and lawmen spawned to stop me. Couldn't be further away from any town. Honestly, making a game would be more profitable. If you can make it cheaply, you're selling a lot. First of all, it's an audience that buys more stuff, and you can sell each unit for more money, right? And you can honestly sell more copies. Even though it's very saturated. Steam is very saturated. It's still less saturated than the Amazon book market by a lot, and you can still find success with that. But the main reason to make a game is because you really want to make a game, not because you're trying to make a lot of money, because chances are you're not going to make a lot of money. Same thing with writing a book. You have to really want the book to exist. That's where you need to start with, and then other things can happen as you go. Couple minutes behind, but man, do I feel like Oblivion captured an atmosphere and vibe that just couldn't be replicated in Skyrim. Beautiful, otherworldly aesthetic replaced with gray and brown. Yeah, I think Oblivion is more aesthetically pleasing than Skyrim by a wide margin as far as its base game goes. You can make Skyrim very beautiful, but most of the things to make Skyrim beautiful are making it more realistic, which doesn't necessarily translate to beauty, whereas Oblivion is beautiful, and that full screen glow effect works. It looks like a place that you'd want to go to. A lush, living, and beautiful place. Where Skyrim doesn't necessarily look like that. Can you elaborate on what you don't like about comic subculture? I don't want to like crap on any particular people, but it's the personalities. It's the personalities, right? The personalities of the American comic subculture are some of the worst personalities I've ever dealt with in my entire life. People with manifestly serious personality disorders, people who are terrible at their job, people who are horribly unprofessional to every other person they deal with and their customers, right? Like there's a whole bunch of people. I think for me, it's very safe for me to say that I would never crowdfund a comic at this point, except for one guy who I've crowdfunded comic, one or two guys I've crowdfunded, like paid, like bought into their crowdfunding, which I don't really like crowdfunding as a thing. I'm not into crowdfunding as a consumer, but I'll crowdfund them because I trust them and I trust them to get the product out. Other ones, I wouldn't crowdfund them because I don't want them to have my name, my email address, my mailing address. You know, they could dox me and send someone after me because I said something they didn't like, right? Like, we're talking about people who are completely mentally unbalanced. dominate the entire American comic industry. And it's not just Marvel and DC, it's the indies as well. It's full of people who are they have narcissistic personality disorder or some other major mental impairment that stops them from being able to be a normal person and conduct a business like a normal person. It's constant drama. I don't want to deal with it, right? And if that means I miss out on their customers, so be it, because their customers act just like they do, right? Most of the comic fans are gross nerds. No offense. I'm using that as a broad put down. They're obsessive and they're extremely acidic about everything that goes on with comics. They are totally different from most other people that are just like, well, I'm not going to buy that. You know, and the drama over Concord, for example, was that people just didn't care about it. They're just like, that looks dumb. I'm not buying that. And then it's like, oh, I can't believe you're such evil people for not buying Concord. Well, why would I buy it if you think I'm evil for not buying it? It's the same thing with comics. Like, your evil straight white males are not buying our comics. Well, why would I do that when you do nothing but talk about how bad I am? Why would I buy your comic? Or the flip side is like constantly harassing independent comic creators, or independent comic creators harassing their own fans. So I don't want to deal with that. So I'm not going to. You know, you guys can find someone else to make the comic that you want to read, and more power to you, and more power to them. I'm not going to do it. Still love Dark Brotherhood questline in Oblivion. I kind of agree on the visual novel route. Yeah, I would totally make a visual novel. It's on the list. My camera fell out of focus. There I am. Maybe. You can look at my beautiful Fender Meteora guitar with matching strap. I love that guitar. Yeah, I would do a visual novel. It would be a fun challenge for me. I could work with an artist for hire and possibly pay him a really good wage to do a good job for me. I could program it myself. It's within my realm of ability, like using RenPy and doing Python. Not that big of a deal. And it plays to my strengths, which is writing, and then I could do the music too if I needed to. Or I could hire someone to do the music if I didn't want to spend the effort. I could hire someone who's good at doing that kind of music and hire them to do the music if I want to. But if I wanted to save money or I really cared about the music, I could do that myself too. Yeah. That's the reason I don't play Final Fantasy XIV. Every time I hear about it outside of the stream, it's being promoted by LGBTQ types. To me, it's like, it's weird because Final Fantasy XIV is not full of like woke agenda stuff that I can see. World of Warcraft now is, but the people who play World of Warcraft don't seem like that type. And it's like, how do you square that circle? And my explanation was, people don't read quest text, so they don't even know. They're like, Chromie's trans. Most people are like, who? Who's Chromie? It's like, Chromie, the little gnome dragon. The dragon whose form is a gnome. They're like, who's that? I don't remember that. So didn't you do a bunch of quests with her? I don't remember. I ran through the quest as quick as possible, skipping every quest dialogue, going to where the map highlights it, killing when I'm supposed to, and getting on so I can get to max level and start raiding. Like, they don't care about the quests. The quests are an obstacle to them doing the peen work of like getting into raids. I don't give a shit about the story. That's why the World of Warcraft story has been so bad for so long, is the players actually don't care about it at all. Final Fantasy XIV, it's the reverse. You at least got to tell a good story. You know, there are more good indie games than anyone has time to play. I agree. I guess for me, it'd be a little easier since I can draw. Not good, but I can draw. Got to get better though. Yeah, I mean, I could. That's another thing that I spent some time trying to work on a couple years ago. Was like, all right, I'm going to get back into my artistic skills and just develop those a little bit. And you just only have so much time in the day. It's really hard to add another skill to that. You know, it's really hard to add drawing into my skill stack to do it at the level that I want to do it. So I had a lot of other things come up, and that was the one that had to get dropped, was like working on the drawing and stuff like that. I spent a year like learning Japanese. It was really fun. I realized at the end of it, I need to spend a lot more than a year learning Japanese to get really good at it. And I had to kind of let the Japanese study go so that I could do other things that are more important right now, like writing books and taking care of my kids, for example. So it's these things, you know, I don't regret investing time in them because I learned through those how to recognize better art by developing my own skills. And I'd love to get better at art, and then maybe I could do that piece too. But at that point, like, what am I doing? I'm basically doubling the amount of work that I'm doing for what purpose? If the game is going to be profitable, I just have to make it profitable enough that I can afford to pay an artist. And that just takes I don't have to develop that skill. It takes a whole thing off the table. It's not like I do have to develop skills like to program in Python, but I've done that before. So it's more like kind of resurrecting a dead skill, resurrecting something old that I've done, rather than trying to develop something new straight off a hand. I could hire somebody to translate it into Japanese, or to translate it into Portuguese or Spanish or something, or Catalan or French oil languages. Now with AI, I could like make a visual novel and translate it into whatever tongue people wanted it to. It's like, man, I want this in Serbo-Croatian. It's like, I got you covered, dude. My AI translated this into Serbo-Croatian for you. Enjoy. Right? I don't know how to say enjoy in Serbo-Croatian, but you get the idea. Feel the same way. Plus, as an illustrator, I'd only do it if I were able to exploit the visual media, as well as the very best authors can take prose to the new level. Yeah. I like Oblivion. Bloom. Yeah. So bloom effect. What is the bloom effect? You'll see it in old games. Original World of Warcraft had a full screen glow effect. Original Oblivion had bloom effect. Overlord had this. What other games? A lot of games from the mid-2000s had this glow effect. Overlord is very glowy. What else has it? Like the original version of Final Fantasy XII for the PS2 has this glow effect a little bit, right? And what it is it just it puts I don't know how to put it. It just makes things look like there's more. Like if you look at a light, and if you look at a light, you'll see that there's like a slight glow around the light source. When you look at a light with your eyes, and that's because your eyes are not completely transparent. The light gets scattered a little bit as it goes through your cornea and all that kind of stuff. So it makes it look like that. It makes it look like it's a very light place with lots of light around it. Is it completely realistic? No, but it gives a kind of warmth to every scene that I really loved. The full screen glow in World of Warcraft was just looked perfect. And I actually don't think modern hardware can duplicate it properly. Like, it looked different playing at like 1280 by 1024 4x3 in 2004 on like a Macintosh or something. Like, it just looked different. It just doesn't look like you can run it on a modern, it runs on a potato. You can still run the original 1.12 client on Windows, but it just doesn't quite look the same. Skyrim is a mood game. Is a one mood game. If you're in that, the atmosphere hits you hard. You know what? I will agree with that completely. It's not my favorite mood, but I often can see that it's a mood. I think Morrowind is a mood game as well, and they're different moods. Morrowind to me has a much more slower mood. Skyrim is slower. Oblivion feels. Well, I guess Skyrim's a little different, right? Morrowind has a feel of like, I want to read things and I want to sit still and read things, because that's what a lot of the game is. Whereas Oblivion is a lot of like walking through nature, and Skyrim is a lot of looking at scenery, like very stark scenery. It's drama culture at this point, Red Barchetta says. I agree. We're talking about comics culture. It's drama culture. Save the drama for your mama, guys. I'm getting too old. I'm 41. I'm getting too old to deal with people not liking me and me having to pretend to like people that don't like me. Like, it makes me feel like I'm 19 again in the worst possible way. Anytime I like accidentally am in some sphere of that. Right. Zimamaro, I have a great idea for a video game right now, but then I'm reminded I have no skills or resources to make it happen, so I must suffer in silence. All right, let's take a look. Let's start with that statement, because this is, I wrote this whole book. It's called Keys to Prolific Creativity. You can get it if you're part of my Patreon for free, or you can just buy it from Amazon. I will link it right now for y'all. Writing resources. Amazon, clean links. So just to show you how many books I've ended up writing. Okay, I'm going to pull up. Here's the list of books I've written. And an album is on here too. There it is. Boom, there it is. 90 ratings. Let's get it up to 100, guys. If you read this book, drop a review, drop a rating. Love to get 100 reviews on that. So let's talk about that though. So I get this a lot. I'd love to write a book. And my answer is, so why don't you? And they're like, because I can't write books. So you end up with this self-defeating cycle of I can't do this, therefore I can't do it. Right? Rather than, okay, so what do you need to do that? And make a list of skills that you need to gain in order to do that task. So I've heard someone say, I want to record a metal album. I'm like, I've said that myself too. Why don't I do it? It's because I just have other projects that I need to do that are more valuable right now, and I will never make money. It's highly unlikely I'd make money recording a metal album, even if it was really good. So I make a slightly more money making books, right? So, maybe it's one on the bucket list is like record a cool like doom metal album or something. Anyway, all right, what do you need to learn to do that? So actually, I'll use the album as an example. Like, okay, well, you need to know how to play the instruments that are going to be on the album. So can you play guitar? They're like, yeah, I play guitar. Okay, great. Can you sing? They're like, no. All right, well, now you know what you need to learn. You need to learn to sing. Okay. Or you need to hire someone to do the singing. You need to find someone to do the singing. So those are your two options. Okay. Let's put those to the side. What's the other thing you need to do? Well, I got to play bass. Do you own a bass? No. Okay, well, you need to buy one. You need to buy a bass guitar and learn how to track bass. It's not that hard if you already play guitar. I've made plenty of money playing bass, even though I'm mainly a guitar player at this point. Okay, so there's something you need to do. Okay, well, how do you record it into a computer? Well, you need an audio interface, so you have to find money and buy it. Now you've got a budget for things. I got to buy an audio interface that I'm going to plug my guitar into. Okay. Now people ask like, well, what amps do I need? It's like, nope, you're going to do all virtual amps. So you need to buy Amplitube. You need a digital audio workstation, a DAW, DAW. So you need to decide which one you're going to get. Reaper is cheap. That's $60. You can buy that one. And that one will work just fine for tracking a metal album. And a lot of professionals use Reaper. So I would say use Reaper. But you could also use Pro Tools, which is from Avid. You could use Cubase from Steinberg, which is owned by Yamaha now. Both of those are good options. And I think Adobe even has one as well, though I haven't used it. The one I use is Ableton or Ableton, however you want to pronounce it. I don't care. Right, that's the one I use to record, and I really love that one because it lets me do live performances as well, and it has a great workflow. So you just decide which one you're going to get, you get it, and then you have to learn how to write the music. You have to learn how to organize the songs. Maybe you got to look up some YouTube videos on song organization. Maybe you got to look up some YouTube videos on how to record with microphones, how to track guitars, right? So you start coming up with lists of things you have to learn, and then you go learn those, and then you do it. So if we look at a game, say I want to make a game. Now I haven't made a game yet, but I can start coming up with a list. And as you get deeper into it, of course you're going to learn new things that you got to learn. You're going to learn, oh, I need to do this. And so you find people who are ahead of you, and you listen to what they have to say, because they're going to be just like how I am ahead of most people on book publishing. I like to teach people what they need to know to publish a book to save them time, energy, money, that kind of stuff. So you find those people in gaming and you listen to what they have to say. Okay, what do you have to learn? You hear someone say, I have to learn programming and I don't know shit. Okay. What programming do you have to learn to make a game? Because there's a lot of programming languages and there's a bunch of different game engines. So before you start thinking about like, I have to learn what programming is, yeah, you do. And you can take like a course in that to get you started. But think about what you need to learn to make a game, right? If you were doing Unity, I think most of the scripting's done in C#. So maybe you need to figure out how to learn C# programming. Learn that scripting language, okay? Maybe you take Unity. There's a bunch of Unity tutorials. Maybe you use those to learn how to operate the engine. I don't recommend Unity now at this point, but anyway, like you decide on your engine you're going to use. Maybe it's like Game Maker Studio. Maybe it's Unreal or something, right? Depending on the game that you want to make. You start setting your limits, and then you figure out what you have to learn. I got to learn this scripting language. I have to learn this this engine. I'm going to make it in this engine. So if I'm going to make a visual novel, I'm going to pick an engine. Probably going to be RenPy. I have to learn Python to use that. Well, for me, the best way to learn is to start trying to do it and then figure out what I can't do and go learn that. Oh, I don't know how to make it do this. And so do this. Oh, you need to script. You need to write it like this. You need to script this animation this way or whatever it's going to be. You have to script this action in this way. Okay, boom. I'll go learn how to write that. And look up a manual for how to do that or look up a video. So you learn things one at a time according to the obstacles that are there. So once you know like what engine you're going to do it in, and so once I'm in RenPy, then I can figure out, okay, this is how I want to do this, and I can start writing the game, like the story. Then I need art. Well, do I need to learn the art? Well, how about I do, like my idea right now would be, I'll just use a bunch of AI art as like placeholder art to get the game in a functional state. And then once I have that, and I know that I can script the whole game, and I know that I can write the whole game, and I know that the game operates, it has a minimum viable product, then I go hire the artists to do all the real art. And then I also have an idea of like, oh, this is the mood I want for this scene. I'm going to do a background like this, and I'll do a character like this, and I'll do some music like this. You can have AI do all like placeholder stuff for all of this. And then you can show it to somebody and be like, I just had AI do this as a placeholder. This is kind of the mood I want. You know, can you do something that makes you think of this that's maybe somewhat in this direction? And an artist will be able to do it. If they're not super offended that you did AI not to even publish it, but just to make it a minimum viable product. I remember the guy who did Braid, which was a famous indie game. He had all these placeholder graphics that were just done with like MS Paint. They were garbage. Then he handed them to an artist, and then a real artist like did all the art. So he had already been programming the game with placeholder art before he had a real artist do it. So anyway, that's how you would do it. Like, I have no skills to make it happen. Figure out what skills you need, learn those skills, and then you can also decide which skills you don't need to learn, and then hire someone to do those skills, right? Not dissing you. I think the culture won't change until people make it change. Yeah, well, I'm not interested in making a bunch of people change. It's not something that's super, like, it's not on my bucket list. Just draw, man. In a year, you'll be good. Problem is just finding the time to practice, because I have so many other things on my schedule. Carving out an hour, I would, if I wanted to approach it the way I know how to do it, which is the same way that I learned to write, learned to play guitar, I got to practice for like an hour a day. I don't have an extra hour a day right now with all the other things that I'm doing. So I have to give up something to gain that hour. What am I going to give up? Am I going to stop working out? Well, no, I need to maintain my health. That's pretty important. Am I going to stop making dinner for my kids and feed them SpaghettiOs? I don't want to do that. Could I spend less time with my wife? I don't really want to do that either, right? So there's a lot of things I don't really want to give up. So I just have to kind of hold the course until I'm ready to give up a lot of things, and then you can commit to that. So for people who don't have a lot of stuff in their life, it's easy to say, just draw. And that's no offense, because that's a correct thing. You just need to practice. For people who have a lot of things, time is a zero-sum game, and you have to decide what you're going to give up, because I don't have a lot of stuff to give up right now. I could give up reading. I could read less. I could not play games, right? I spend precious little time playing games, but I enjoy them, you know. I have to give something up. So what am I going to give up? I left for the Iron Age. Yeah. Comicsgate died so quickly. It devolved from a legitimate alternative to toxic wasteland quicker than anything I've ever seen. I'm an artist and trying to get into graphic design, and has been tough, and it's drawing adjacent. Yeah. Well, I taught myself graphic design basically just kind of like what I described, is that I needed to figure out how to do it for books. So I just learned those skills. And I had an art background, so it kind of helped. So if you have an art background, it'll probably help. Like, how do you learn how to do, like cover text design? Like what goes into that? Like, that's really simple, right? Like text design, it seems really simple, but people mess it up so much because they're not really analytical about what is effective in other areas. So it's kind of interesting. Same thing with like designing logos. It's like, how do you gesture towards something? Like, how do I make a logo that looks cool? It's hard, right? It's a challenge. But if you already have the artistic backing, then it's easy to analyze what makes other logos work and then figure out how to do those. Have you ever played the Spider-Man movie tie-in video games with voice acting by Tobey Maguire, J.K. Simmons? I don't know what you mean. Oh, the old ones. It's been years. Like the PS2 ones? Yeah, but it's been years. Glow effects like there's a thin layer of mist everywhere catching light. Yeah. It's bloom. Glow and bloom are the same. Yeah. It's the same thing. It's the same idea. Full screen glow, full screen bloom, same idea. CRT screens are different from modern LCD and OLEDs. That's true. But it's not the screen, because I played original World of Warcraft on an LCD, and it looked different. It's the way it was rendered. Did you ever play Dishonored? Yes, long time ago. That's the one I never played. I heard the sequel was good. Didn't play the sequel. Final Fantasy 16 was built for a modern OLED 4K HDR screen if you could do it. Yeah, that's what I played it on. I'm looking at a modern 4K OLED right here. It's a great monitor. It's an LG monitor. Good computer monitor. Skyrim's music was the best part of it. Really makes it feel epic. I agree. I think Jeremy Soule was just legendary with all of the Elder Scrolls soundtracks. I'm guessing they're not going to have him for Elder Scrolls 6 because he got canceled, because he slept with women. He slept with a woman once, and so that's a big no-no. You got to be a monk, man. So he probably won't be back because of that. At the same time, like, he crowdfunded a like symphony album that he just like never released. And then he's like, have you ever tried to write a symphony? And I saw him say that. I'm like, I have written symphonies. I have done that. I've written sonatas and symphonies. I've written sonatas for orchestra. I've done that. It's like, I have done that. You know? Why can't you record it? It's expensive to record with an orchestra. Really expensive. It's a lot of books. Yeah, I've done a lot of books. I've released a lot of books. Here's the newest one. I'm going to find the newest one. Do I have a copy of it here? Somewhere I do. Way down here. Sorceress Blood. Grab it, guys. Sorceress Blood. I wrote this book live on the screen. Live on the air. I use Blender to make animations. Just released one on my YouTube this week. That's awesome. And people self-teach themselves Blender. Yeah. Learn how to manipulate time. I need a time turner. There's also a good King Kong video game that tied into the Peter Jackson movie. I never played the video game. It's kind of fun. Like, the Peter Jackson King Kong was like, I wanted to make this game, or I want to make this movie, and so then I made it. It's like, I always wanted to make a King Kong movie. And so after Lord of the Rings, he's like, now I could just make whatever movie I want. I'm going to make this one. You know, I gave your Neo Patronage stream with Brian a few months back another listen. A lot of good gems in that one. I for some reason forgot. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Was there any other weird game release this week? Oh, this is what I wanted to talk about this week. Finale. All right, so this is only going to matter to like musicians and especially people who are old musicians like yours truly. Let me put my, I'm going to move my, no. Oh my gosh. What just happened? Oh, I ruined it. There it is. Oh, I can hear cicadas outside and my dog barking. All right, the end of Finale. The end of Finale. Okay. Finale was like the first music notation software. It originally came on one floppy disk that you could use on a Mac Plus, and I might still have my original 1.0 floppy disk somewhere. It's a score writer program. It was the industry standard for a long time, and it's still the industry standard on Broadway. They're not going to be developing it anymore. Why does this stuff matter? Well, if you look carefully, basically you won't be able to... Oh, no, they updated this. They said authorization will remain available indefinitely. They said that they were going to end authorization after 2025, which basically meant that if you pirated the software, you could keep using it. But if you didn't pirate the software, you wouldn't be able to install it on your new computer, even if you bought it, which is awful, right? But that's the reality of the DRM in the music business. Music business DRM is the worst in any group of software that I can think of, whether it's Steinberg or it's Adobe or not really Adobe. Adobe's is not as bad, believe it or not. Adobe's is one of the least bad DRMs. Adobe, Avid, or not Adobe, I'm sorry. Make Music, Avid, Steinberg, these three, they install like rootkit level DRMs that crash your computer and make you unable to use hardware. Or they have like a little hardware dongle that you have to plug into a USB port, which will crash your computer all the time. It's the worst DRM in the history of the world. And they punish their customers by making them use this DRM when hackers will, as soon as a new version would come out, instantly it's hacked so you don't have to use that. So the best thing to do has always been to use a cracked version of Finale or Cubase or whatever software you wanted to use. From those companies, or Pro Tools, cracked versions only. And this is why, is that once it's over, it will not be possible to authorize Finale on any new devices or reauthorize Finale. Technical support will no longer be available. Okay, there will be no updates to Finale. Now, the thing is they haven't added any real features in like 20 years. It's kind of like Microsoft Word. Like, what are the new features of Microsoft Word? It's like, the spell checker is slightly better, and now you can save to the cloud directly. It's like, that's it, right? So yeah, Finale is like, our bad MIDI samples are slightly not as bad this year, right? But they're giving you a discount to switch to Dorico, which is from Steinberg, which is owned by Yamaha. Has terrible DRM. I've tried using Dorico, I like their free version, and it's like you can't get the playback engine to not sound horrible or require a bunch of fiddling. When Finale, you could just press play and it just had default like MIDI sounds that sounded bad, but you could hear the music that you had put into the score, so that was cool, right? So hey, those of you who pirated the software, you get to keep using it. Those of you who paid for it, you're shit out of luck. Like, this is the point where you have to say, if this is not a moral case for pirating software, I don't know what is. Even if you paid for it, if you went and found the pirated version of Finale, you could use it forever. My version of Finale, which is like from 2013 or something, still works on Windows, still works. Okay? You don't need the newest version. this is actually why their ending finale is that they've come out with a new version every year, and there's no features to add, so no one wants to buy it, right? Why would you buy the new version? Only like certain people will buy the new version, and you can't find that many things to do each year, and then the software gets less and less stable each year, so it gets worse and worse each year, while adding no features. Yeah, I understand why they're ending it, and I totally get it. The problem is you were so worried about people pirating it that you made it loaded up with the world's worst DRM and made it impossible for people to keep their purchases in the future. Like, what we need to have is software that comes on discs again. So you can buy it, it's on a disc, and the disc has like a little serial number on the back that you put into the little wizard, like in 1999. So that it can just work indefinitely. Not this phone home business where they turn off the servers and your software is broken forever. Because the end result is like you have to just get cracked software. For anything that you want to keep using, you have to get a cracked version as a backup at least. Okay. I want to pay software companies. I want to pay programmers for their work. I pay for my software. Okay. But you have to be honest that a cracked version is what you need to have. Like I have a version of Microsoft Word 2010 that is portable that I'll just keep forever because it will always read Word documents. It'll read 2024 Word 2010 still works. In 2040 Word 2010 will still read my books. It'll still open my documents. So I thought I'd point that out. Like, it's like one of the worst things that you can do to your customers is set it up so that they're always punished for using your software, and then when you decide to close up business, they can't use the software they paid for anymore. Right? And I get it for industries where they're like, we feel like we need to have software which is constantly being updated. It's like, do you? I actually don't think you do. I think we may be entering a time where you don't really need to have software that's updated all the time. You want active development to like fix bugs is mainly what people want, right? But if you're working in Broadway, it's like, do you need a new version? You actually don't, but I get that it's like once the new OS doesn't work with the old thing, and this has been a problem with Apple for a long time because Apple doesn't. Windows has used more or less the same processor architecture for like a long time, and the 64-bit processors will still run x86 code. Backwards compatibility has always been a thing, but with Macintosh, if you go back to like the last version of Finale I had on a Mac was Finale 2004, I think, and it's always been a problem to authorize stuff, by the way, right? Like it crashes and then it forgets that it's authorized, and I have to call Finale, and then they won't help me. They just want me to buy a new version. They're like, just buy a new version because it's not working, right? We can't authorize it. It's like, well, that's stupid. Your program crashed and now I can't use it. Now you want me to buy another one. To hell with you. I'll get a cracked version, right? So, but back then, those ran on a PowerPC architecture. They ran on a PowerPC 750 G4, right? The same processor architecture, by the way, that's in the Xbox 360. And I think it's the same processor architecture in the GameCube, the Wii, and the Wii U. All have PowerPC processors. Anyway, they switched from PowerPC to Intel because they felt like PowerPC was not being competitive. Like IBM and Motorola were not being competitive with Intel. And then they switched to their own. So there's 3 different processor architectures that have been out there over the last 20 years, whereas Windows has had one. It just means that older versions are more guaranteed to break if you're on a Macintosh operating system, unless you're just never upgrading your hardware ever. But that's not an issue with Windows. The issue is they don't let you authorize the new thing when you build a new computer. I wasn't referring to making people change. More like making better things than the current comics offered, and from there expanding out reach using new methods. You mentioned visual novels, games. Yeah, I wouldn't do it with comics for the reasons I talked about, right? I'm playing into... It's a it's really hard to grow the pie, and the current pie is very small and very toxic. So I don't want to market to that pie. Who am I going to market to? People who don't read comics? What the hell is the point of that? Why make a comic? Make something that they would actually rather read. Maybe they read books. Well, it's better to make a book for them, right? It's kind of backwards. So yeah, there's no reason for me to make a comic as far as I'm concerned, as with the way things are right now. Making a comic that wouldn't appeal to current, and this other thing too is like, why don't you make a comic? Like, what am I going to make a comic on? Right? Am I going to make a superhero comic? I hate superheroes now, right? It's like, they're stupid. Like, I don't want to make a superhero comic. Well, that's all that they're interested in, right? The market is only interested in Marvel, DC style cape shit. If I don't want to do that, then that means that I really shouldn't do that. No one will buy it, right? Who's going to buy it? No one. No one's going to buy it. So there's no reason to do it, right? Growing the pie is very difficult. And that's the big flaw that people come up with, is they're like, oh, and I could look and say like, well, this guy had $100,000 Kickstarter. Great. I'm not a established Marvel pro with a bunch of little parasocial followers that have known me for 20 years and the work that I got done for hire, So I can't really expect to do that. And then I'm not making something that they want. I'm not making a superhero comic. I'll be doing something cool instead. No one's going to buy it. So not a lot of reason to do that. And then while you're doing that, then you have to deal with all of those people attacking you constantly for no reason. Because if you do ever have any success, you can bet that you're going to have pizzas mailed to your house from Comicsgate people or something, right? That's just how it's going to happen. I don't want to deal with it. It will likely be possible soon to use AI programs to convert sheet music or MIDI files into orchestral music. Easier and more realistic than using sample libraries. Yeah, maybe. Like that would be like the next level of using like sample libraries. And that there's something to that, right? Which is that, Bach wrote his music down, but I need a performer to perform it for me to hear it. So an AI would kind of be an intermediary, like it would be a MIDI performance. The equivalent of like, it's just a really high quality MIDI performance. Orchestra players are not going to like that because they want to get paid to perform it live. And I think that they should continue to get paid to perform it live to the extent that people want to go see the concerts. You want to see an artistic expression of that, not just a like computerized playback. And even if it's very high quality, and they've been trying to change their playback engines for 20 years to make it better, and it's just never been at the level of a real performance. It just isn't. And it can be good enough that you can get the idea of what it's supposed to sound like, but rarely will it be good enough to just like be the finished product. Maybe with AI it could be closer to that finished product, but I still think people are going to want the artistic touch of real musicians and what they do. My pirated Photoshop 6 is still going strong. If you purchase the software, you're ethically in the clear to use a cracked version. That's my opinion. That is not a legal opinion, though. That's an ethical opinion. Adobe's subscription model should be a crime. Believe it or not, they're like their DRM is less intrusive than most other companies, especially the music. The music software companies have the worst, most intrusive DRM imaginable. I hate it. I'm learning to never update anything unless you're willing to spend days to address new issues. This was the way every recording engineer had their system set up years ago. I'm at Pro Tools this amount. I'm at Mac OS this with this hardware, and I changed nothing about the system until I'm going to replace everything. I'm building a new system, make it sure it works, and I never update the software, never update anything. Because if you update your OS, it could break everything. It could break the Cubase DRM. It could break it could break your sample library. It could just break everything. Things just didn't work. It's so much better now. And I feel like Ableton or whatever you want to say. I always thought it was Ableton. It looks like Ableton, but it could be Ableton. Ableton. If you like Ableton, that one tends to work way better, and I will update it constantly because it always works. Out of curiosity, what makes you hate superheroes now? They're full of stupid stories. The stories are bad. They've just been bad for a really long time. And if you go back, most of the stories are really for kids, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's for a young audience. But the current audience is people that are my age and want adult stories with things that are designed to appeal to children. It feels prurient. I don't like it. You have a couple of female superheroes staring at each other, complaining about men refusing to fight because they respect each other as women. That's stupid. There's nothing, and the thing about like most superheroes is that it's just, we've had them for so long. Like, we've done so much of that. Spider-Man's been around for 50, 60 years or something. You got to do new things, but they don't do new things. It's just the same thing over and over again. The last comic I bought was God's Dog by Jonathan Pajot through the crowdfund. That's cool. I think Jesse worked on that. Jesse White did. You can see some of his art back here. Since I'm on the subject, hey, I found The Terminal Man free on YouTube, where the computer scientist is subject to electrode implant surgery by Neuropsychiatric Services. There was something else that was free on YouTube. Someone uploaded like the entire Zack Snyder cut of something onto YouTube, and people were watching. I was like, what? It's like, they just don't care. No one cares. You can watch it. Didn't get a takedown notice or anything. You know, one of those funny things. So anyway, yeah, that's why I don't really have plans to do. I mean, that could change in the future. You know, but for me to do a comic, that means I kind of have to drop all the other stuff that I do, which I think is important. And if I'm going to drop the other stuff that I'm doing to do a new project, it's probably not going to be a comic. It'll be a game or an album of some different kind of variety that I haven't done yet, that I have to go really deep on. And the truth is, like with social media and all of these other distractions and having a business like mine that does so many different things, it's really hard to go deep on any one thing. You have to really go out of your way to eliminate as many distractions as possible and set your life up so that you can focus and go deep on what you're working on, what you're learning, and what you are trying to do artistically, because time is short. You know, it's a zero-sum game. So for me to pick up new skills, I have to drop something else. You know, I have to drop one of those things, right? And right now, I'll just tell everybody, like right now, I have content set up for the blog. I have content set up for the YouTube channel for the next couple months, which means I don't have to spend time thinking about like what I'm going to talk about on YouTube. I can just kind of hop in and do it. What is that clicking? Is my hearing aid on? Click, 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 click. Something here. Did this turn on? This is my old hearing aid. It died. Which has been a problem, because they're like $5,000. It's definitely not that. Hobo, stop. You don't need to bark. There's nothing to bark at. Okay? You're okay. Nothing bad is happening. There's no one bad. There's someone bad? I need to get my gun? I need to get a gun? Is that why you're barking? There's a bad person? He's upset about it. Someone walked by. Go check for intruders. Yes, I could tell from my feed page growing shorter. Tubers are uploading less frequently, so they're taking up the slack with freebies. Yeah. What is Rebel Moon? Okay. There are several things which are Rebel Moon. One is a video game developed by Vox Day, in the 1990s to showcase a very specific video card. I don't remember the title of the video card, but it came as a pack-in with the video card. There's a Rebel Moon series that I didn't watch because I don't watch those things. So I would Google that, and it's either one of those two things. Rebel Moon, I think, was kind of influenced by The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert Heinlein. Yeah. Cicadas and crickets. The cicadas are loud. We get three or four different species that emerge here. And so they have different ones. The first one's like, and then you get another one that's like, meow, 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 meow. And then they do different noises as the time goes on. It's really interesting. Oh, it's Zack Snyder's attempt to make a massive new space opera. Yeah. He hyped it up as something that would kill and replace Star Wars. Then it was released and failed miserably. Yeah, I never paid any attention to it. It's okay. But there is a Rebel Moon game developed by Vox Day. Oh, and that might be the Zack Snyder movie someone put on YouTube. It could be that one. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Someone just put the whole thing on YouTube. It was like, here, just watch it. And like they didn't take it down. It's like, what? Usually, like, I can't put a clip from a movie onto YouTube without my stream getting taken down. You know, but other people can do it. Other people can do it. So yeah, did I link the... Yeah, so I'll have Substack stuff. I'll have videos coming out tomorrow and Friday. So I'll have something tomorrow, something Friday. I'll have another Fantasy Live Write. We'll go live. Yeah. So I'm getting that kind of front loading that work so that I can just do more focus on finishing up a couple of books that I need to get done for this current cycle of writing. King Leper's done. It's been done for a while. It's going to take a while to get it prepped for release. I have 3 more Moonsong books, so I need to get those done. I need to get I need to take Bright Children off of Kindle Vela. I have to now write them a letter to get it off. Just in case anyone's wondering, I know you're not supposed to have things on Kindle Vela and release them on Kindle. I did that with Sorcerer's Blood with this guy right here. So I did that. It's still on Kindle Vela if you want to read it on Kindle Vela. They just never checked that I double dipped. Because I had to write him a letter to get him to take it off of Kindle Vela, and they could take 6 weeks to take it off. And I was like, you used to be able to just unpublish it. Now they don't let you do that. So I'm like, I'll just put it on Amazon. This is the one that I wrote live on the show earlier this year. I'm like, I'll just put it on Amazon and see what they do. Now, they didn't initially publish it. This is the story. So they didn't initially publish it. And the reason was not because it was on Kindle Vela. The reason was because I had put it on Substack. You could read it on Substack. We could read like part of it for free on Substack. And so I told them, they're like, you don't have the copyright for this. I'm like, I do, because I freaking wrote it. I have the copyright. It's like, this is freely available on the internet. It is not freely available on the internet. It's available to my patrons through Patreon and Substack, which I'll link the Patreon too. It is not freely available on the internet. Here is a video of me writing it live. All of these videos are me writing the book live. You can watch me write every single word that's in it and do all the editing live if you want to. These are the recordings of me doing it. I own the copyright. Finally, weeks later, they let me put it out on Amazon. Now, in that time, I was still able to publish the paperback. So the paperback was live. Right? That's why the link probably goes to the paperback and not to the Kindle edition. Right? 99 cents, baby. I bought the paperback on May 9th. I was able to get the paperback and be like, hey guys, here's what the paperback looks like. It's in here somewhere. this giant pile of stuff. Drawings from my kids. I don't know. It's in there somewhere. I read a lot of crap. Put my hat on. I haven't been wearing it because it's been so hot. But, hey, if Christmas gets to start in November 1st, Halloween gets to start on September 1st. So I will be going full Halloween mode for September and October, and no one can stop me. Yeah. Here in Pennsylvania, depending on the time of day, you hear different cicadas. Yeah, different species. They all, and they like alternate years. Sometimes there's species that emerge like every 13 years and every 17, and like it's weird. They're what a really, really, really cool insect. Speaking of graphics, I'm right now playing EverQuest while listening. 25-year-old game, and I feel the graphics serve the game well and hold up in that sense. Old, yes, but not bad. So the great thing about EverQuest and a lot of those older games is, to me, they're a gesture. They're a gesture towards the object, not the object itself. It's a cooler medium. So like you see the werebat, and it's like a little guy. You know, it doesn't look like a bat at all. And you see like skeletons, and the skeletons have not that many polygons, but you get the gesture that this is a skeleton, and so it serves the fantasy, I think, really well. Plus, like EverQuest just had really huge environments. Like the zones were big. You can get lost in them. EverQuest was a different beast, very different beast. It's cool. Final Fantasy 11. Should I play that? I think it's on sale on Steam, so I might get it and play it. I might do like a little Final Fantasy 11 chill stream later this week. It's like, guys, let's get into Final Fantasy 11 and see what's up. You know, let's play some Final Fantasy 11, because that was a real classic MMO. That was more like EverQuest than World of Warcraft for sure. But now they've done a lot of alterations. They did this with EverQuest too, to make it easier to solo. Like in EverQuest, you couldn't solo crap after like a certain level. And it was hard to solo even at like level 1. The whole game was built around get a party and go kill things. You know, I've seen a few videos of people reviewing Rebel Moon. It looks like a bonkers mess. Snyder basically threw Star Wars, heavy metal, magazine, Turok, and even tentacle hentai into a blender. That sounds cool though. See, now you're selling me on it. Did all those things? Now you're selling me on it. We had a huge cicada outbreak in the Ozarks in 1997. It was super loud at night. Yeah, this year has not been as loud as last year. It was like you couldn't talk outside. So you'd have to go inside to talk because the cicadas would just be so loud. And I live in a heavily wooded area, so it's like they're everywhere. I find them all over the house still. I'm finding like cicadas crawling up all over the house. I took some photos last year of them emerging, which was pretty cool. I wish I had had the time or inclination to set up a video camera so you can get like a time lapse of them like emerging from their shell and like spreading their wings out and stuff. It's really cool. The next Star Wars, if it ever happens, won't look anything like Star Wars because there was nothing quite like it in 1977. I agree. The thing about lightning in a bottle, it's a black swan. It's a black swan, okay? So if you are trying to predict what's going to be the next Star Wars, you just know that it's not going to be a predictable event. It's going to be a black swan. It's going to be something that explodes out of nowhere. We don't know what it's going to be. We don't know. It'll be something that makes you feel maybe like Star Wars made you feel, or is big like Star Wars, but it won't look like Star Wars. It won't be the same story. The cicadas are very loud here in Mississippi right now. When they get this loud, it's a sign that summer's ending. Yep. I can feel it. I could feel it when we pass halfway towards the equinox. My mood turns around. I go from like a really frantic and annoyed summer mode into like, it's easy. Everything suddenly feels easy when you get past that. And my neighbors, I think, pick up on it too. Nobody's doing anything outside. Suddenly we get halfway to the equinox. My neighbors are outside clearing trail for the deers. They're cutting up the woods. They're cutting up all the fallen trees. They're outside working. Like, it's the same temperature, but the weather doesn't feel as hot. I don't know how to describe it. The dog days of summer, you're like accelerating towards a relaxed state, if that makes sense. Like it feels like Halloween. It was 92 degrees outside. It still feels like Halloween's coming. And I can feel it. If you want the social experience to play Final Fantasy XI Horizon, you need a party of players to level mobs past level 10. Final Fantasy XI Horizon. What is this, Val? I'm going to have to Google it. Horizon is a new version of Final Fantasy XI at 75 cap. Something that many of us have wanted for the past 10 plus years. Is this a private server? Let's check it out. 2,000 people online. We launch as a progression server starting at the Chains of Promathia expansion. So is this a private server? You play with retail, you just play with NPC trusts until you reach level cap. Yeah. Horizon's really fun, but it is extremely time consuming. I spent 200 hours getting to level 30 as a Dragoon before I quit. I couldn't spend more time on it without becoming a no-lifer. That's the way the original was. So it's probably like the original, which was very much like EverQuest as far as like time sync. There seems to be a debate over physical disabilities in fantasy. I'm going to see if Val has a response. Horizon is a private server. Thank you. That's what I wanted to know. So this is a private server. Really cool. Really cool idea. Forge a new path. Progression server. Starting at Chains of Promathia. All future expansions balanced for level 75 cap. Era plus adjustments. Era horizontal progression with job and systems balancing. Experienced staff. Interesting. I love the aesthetics of Final Fantasy XI, by the way. I know that they look very dated, but like, there's again, it's kind of like EverQuest, but a little bit better. Like a gesture towards the fantastical. It's a cooler medium. Versus Final Fantasy XIV, especially with the graphical update, everything is so sharp in 4K. It looks so good. But then you also notice like, oh, that texture on that book is like 100 by 150. Looks like crap. You know, you notice the random textures that are low. But anyway, Final Fantasy XIV with the graphical update looks great. If you guys haven't checked it out. And if you have the hardware to actually play it like that, wow. It's a beautiful game. Great, beautiful like design of the sets, of the architecture of the characters, right? You don't need hyper realistic lighting. Final Fantasy XIV looks great just the way it is. There seems to be a debate over physical disabilities in fantasy, boiling down to arguments between creative solutions and no, there has to be wheelchair-bound people. It's the I want to be Batman versus I want Batman to be me debate. That's all it is. Is that I feel like women and maybe Gen Z, I don't want to insult Adrian if he's still in the chat, but you know, they're more into I need a character that is me. Whereas us older folk are like, I want to play as a cool character. I want to be Driz Do'Urden. I want Driz Do'Urden to be crippled and anxious like me. Well, my character has an anxiety disorder just like me. What? Now, as a novelist, I might think that way. This character is brutally scarred in King Leper. He's hideous. Not like me. More like, what will that create for him? What kind of story things emerge from that disability? Same thing if you have a character with one arm. You know, he lost an arm in a battle. He's like Guts. What does that mean for his story and for what he does and the way he comes that? That's really good stuff for a story. But for a role-playing game, I mean, you can include that stuff, I guess, if you want to. There's nothing to say you can't. But most people aren't including it because they're thinking, wouldn't it be interesting if the character had to deal with a missing arm? They're thinking, I want a character in a wheelchair like me. I want a character who's disabled like me. Which is just an odd mentality. I'm not going to say people are bad for thinking that way, because I don't think they are. It's just a difference. It's just a difference in thinking about it. It's like, I am not trans because I play like a female character in Final Fantasy XIV, and I have a lot of female characters in WoW. So it's like, are you trans? No. Why would I be? Well, your characters are all female, and my thing is like, so. I find the female form aesthetically pleasing. I think the costumes look good on females. Like, what's the problem? Well, that's you. That's not me. That's a freaking night elf. That's some ancient night elf with a tiger pet. That's Duranta, the the Night Elf. Not Stu to the warrior. I have a human warrior too, right? It's whatever. It's just a different mentality. It's a different mindset. I'm actually not going to say people are bad for thinking like I need my character to be disabled like me so I can role play as them. It's like, let's do one. Can we do one layer of hypothetical? Can you like engage in that hypothetical conditional hypothetical situation, right? If you were disabled, how would you feel? If you were abled, how would you feel? Can we do that? Same thing with the trans thing. It's like, can you imagine what it's like to not feel that way? I can imagine what it's like to be a woman without myself being a woman and wanting to be one. I can imagine what a woman might feel like without me, and I can identify with a woman's perspective without me being a woman. Hopefully we can do that. Hopefully, like, I can meet someone who's not like me and be able to identify their perspective and see how things are for them. Someone from another culture or another race. Like, if I meet someone who's not the same race as me, it shouldn't be some kind of thing where, like, I can never understand you. It's like, no. The whole point of being human is that we can understand each other and we can imagine things from that other person's perspective without being them, right? I don't become black if I see something from a black person's perspective. Hopefully, right? I don't lose my identity of self. My thoughts on video games that reuse concepts. It's okay to swipe stuff as long as it ends up being really cool. It's all about having fun. There's lots of Easter eggs and tributes in original World of Warcraft, and you wouldn't say that they swiped something. They did, right? Like the whole Cthulhu thing, like they swiped actively from H.P. Lovecraft for like all the old god stuff. Like, so what? It's just a fun idea. Why not? It makes for like a cool conflict. Rebel Moon does sound cool in concept, but Snyder's execution makes it less than the sum of its parts. The same is true of Sucker Punch. Yeah. All right. In a way, the most successful attempt at a new Star Wars was probably the Avatar movies. Both of them at least made a ton of money, although they haven't had the cultural impact of Star Wars. Yeah, Avatar movies. So what I say is actually the new Star Wars is it happened and people missed it, and that was Mass Effect. Mass Effect is a really huge gaming phenomenon that everyone played. Everyone was playing Mass Effect and Mass Effect 2. And the reason Mass Effect 3 got a lot of pushback is that those first games, people loved them so much. And I see why people like Mass Effect 2. I think it's not my favorite. Mass Effect 1 is, but like, that was the actual Star Wars franchise for millennials, was Mass Effect. But people weren't thinking about it because they only think in movies, right? We're always thinking outdated, right? How many, I don't even know how much money Mass Effect has made. I'm going to Google it. Maybe someone figured it out. $92 million. It's like, is anyone surprised that the Mass Effect franchise has just sold 20 million? That's a lot, guys. 20 million records is cultural impact level, right? It's like, it's only sold 20 million. It's like 20 million is like Thriller. That's like selling Thriller. That's huge. Guys, that's huge. But we think in terms of movies, so it's really hard to get outside of that frame of like, it has to be always compared to what Star Wars did in movies. No reason why people couldn't have disabled people in their fantasy settings. It's a fun option, or angst and stuff, but at least make it interesting and creative. That's my take. Or, you could also say this. The real new Star Wars is Pokemon. Pokemon is more valuable than Star Wars. That's the real Star Wars, is Pokemon. When I watched Avatar, it felt like one of those IMAX experience movies they have at theme parks. Yeah, I could feel that. I was less than impressed with the story for sure. Yeah. I want my characters to have amputated limbs and have badass prosthetics that double as weapons. and tools. Yeah, that's guts. Maybe I'm just an outlier for my generation, but I definitely don't want me in the game. Yeah, it's like I want to play Stellar Blade. I want to look at the hot chick. You know, I don't want to be her. I say I'm going to do this. It's kind of like how we drive a car and say I'm going to turn left. No, we're actually steering our car left. Like we are not our car. But same thing when you're playing a game. Your avatar, you say I'm going to jump over this thing. It's like you're not the hot girl in the game, right? You're like some old hairy dude with a wizard hat making a hot girl jump over rocks in a game. But we say that because we're operating it the same way we operate a car. We don't become the car. Most people will not say I don't become my car. But we think in terms of that car as being an extension of ourselves, therefore we say I do it. Andrew Lloyd Webber made the Phantom of the Opera much more sympathetic than the book because he identified with the Phantom due to having always found himself very ugly. That's good. I'd rather roleplay as completely different characters. I'm boring, so I'd much rather play a more interesting character. I'd rather have a more interesting story, right? Like real life can be a little boring. Now there's some intruders. Could be my family. Could be someone in to steal my guitars, and I gotta go shoot them. My money's on that it's my wife and my kids coming back from my mom's house. Ending my YI era, the only comics IP I still bought was Matt Murdock Daredevil because of Miller's awesome expansion on the lawyer versus vigilante versus Catholic schism. Yeah, Murdock has a solid basis for the tortured I am the hero or the villain syndrome. Female characters equal you're trans leads to contradiction. Go ahead and come out as trans. Then what is to be said about the male characters you made? So now you want to be a man and should I'm all things. I'm multigender. I played God of War, now I want to be a man. 20 million is Elden Ring and Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. Elden Ring had a big impact. Dark Souls has had a big impact. That's why we're still talking about it. Dark Souls has had a huge impact. The impact is always can be multiplicative beyond what is sold. So even though there's not a lot, there's lots of people who don't play Dark Souls who've never played it. Like I've never played like Dark Souls 3, I think. That was one for PS4. I never played that one. But like I've played Bloodborne, I've played Dark Souls, I've played Demon Souls, right? I've played those games. But if I say Dark Souls to someone who hasn't really played Dark Souls, they still know what the hell you're talking about. So the cultural impact extends beyond just the people who've experienced that thing. You could talk about World of Warcraft. My wife has never played World of Warcraft, but she knows everything. She doesn't know everything, but she knows what World of Warcraft is. And so you can pick up a lot of those things. And if World of Warcraft is a cultural phenomenon, maybe that was the new Star Wars. If it filters into all kinds of things where people say Kek on Twitter and they've never played World of Warcraft and they don't even know what it means. But Kek kind of ends up flowing into the main, the main culture. Or if you want to do deep lore, you say Burr instead of Kek. It's a lot. That's why I don't believe authors that say they've sold 10 million books when I don't know who they are. 10 million books is like your Jurassic Park, right? Books do not sell as well as other things. 10 million books is cultural impact level. If no one knows who you are, then you probably didn't sell 10 million books. You're coming up, you're either lying or you're coming up with that number by including a bunch of other things that don't make sense. Right? Like I have 10 million YouTube views. Is that a lot? Probably not, right? Probably need like 100 million before you start making an impact. But like 10 million books to sell it's a lot of books. If you have 10 million books sold, you're Michael Crichton. It's big. It's big. All right, I'm about out of time for today. That's 2 hours. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to link everything. The first season of Daredevil is arguably the best part of the MCU. I've heard that argument before. All right, I'm going to... Let's see here. What am I going to link? Patreon. I'm linking that again. We're going to... Hey, you can listen to a free album here. Boom, we're going to link that. We're going to link Substack. All right. Yeah. Subscribe on that. Make sure you're subscribed to that. New article every week. Okay. And to be fair, there's 10 million sub YouTubers I've never heard of. Yeah, but the point is like books explode beyond just the people who read them. You can mention 50 Shades of Grey and people who've never read it will be like, I know what you're talking about. You get the idea? And then for some YouTubers, you could say like Mr. Beast and people will know who Mr. Beast is. I think YouTube, maybe it just doesn't apply to YouTube. You might just be right. But like if you sold 10 million books, everybody would know who you are. 10 million books is like you're selling a lot of books. All right, we got those links. Anything else we got to link? I don't know what else to link. That's the main stuff. All right, so join the Patreon. You get free copies of the live rights. You get a free book every month. And yeah, that's what you get. So check that out. I'll see you all next time. Have a great day, and peace out. Happy Halloween. We're starting Halloween September 1st. September 1st, Halloween season begins. I'm making it official. All right, have a great one, and I'll see you all next time. Get the music going.